the business units also need to understand the WIFM, the what's in it for them
Yeah.
as well, that they need to know that this work that they just did is valued and the purpose and the overall impact of it to the company. So we based that on a significant sample size and time frame to get a good sample size of what's coming off that post improvement. So it's not a, hey, we piloted this is what came out of the pilot. This is our projection going forward and sign. No, we want the actual validated data showing that not only did it improve, but it sustained.
Welcome to KPI Fireside. Our mission is simple: to improve companies and to improve careers through continuous improvement. In every episode, we explore the spark, the moment, the mindset, or the method that ignites real change. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, you'll find the insights and inspiration to fuel your next improvement. Welcome back to KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. I am your host, Keith Norris. Our guest today is Chris Keahey. Chris has been instrumental in helping a very large, complex organization extract real, verified business value from their continuous improvement efforts. Chris went from being a retired firefighter to a career in quality and continuous improvement with one of the largest organizations around. In our conversation today, we'll explore how to build a continuous improvement program, how to build a career in continuous improvement, how to measure what truly matters, and what it takes to turn KPIs into real business impact. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Keith. Happy to be here. Finally made this happen.
Chris, I'm so happy that we finally were able to get connected here and do this. I know we've had a lot of conversations over the years. For the podcast here, one of the things that we like to do is start with a little question that we refer to as the spark. And so I want to ask you a little bit about how you got into this career in continuous improvement, because you have a little bit of an interesting story going back to, your prior career. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, very interesting background. Very different than most people in this line of work these days. But started out as a career firefighter, 17 years in the fire service. And that's where I got my first exposure to standard work, standard practices, things of that nature, a lot of the lean side of CI. And just kind of hit a point in my career where I was ready to make a change and went back to college, got my master's in industrial engineering, and started looking for opportunities. And I was still working as a firefighter at the time of going back to school.
I
So
see.
I was juggling that and family and trying to make change in my own life, and then graduated and started looking at opportunities pretty much all around the U.S., seeing what was available and just looking kind of bit for more of an adventure. I'd been born and raised and worked in my hometown and was looking for something, some kind of change, just get away, and came across the company that I work for now, applied there along with a couple of other large companies, and kind of the rest is history, I guess, from there. Went up, flew in for an interview, and just kind of hit it off with the team. And it's like we had known each other forever. Matter of fact, our program manager at the time had given me a phone interview to begin with before I flew in for my in person. And what was supposed to be just a 30-minute kind of cover all of my education, my experience, things of that nature, and what the job role entitled, turned into about an hour and a half phone call like we had known each other our whole lives. So it was almost like a perfect storm, if you will. Just everything just fell in place. It's like I knew and had worked with these people my entire life, day one of getting into the company. And now here I am. See, that was um, August of 2018. I started there September 10th of 2018 and has been in this with the same team ever since.
And what was the role that you were first hired into there?
I was first hired in as an engineer to supporting the continuous improvement program. So I was ground floor coming in as a new college hire at 40 some years old.
Fresh college graduate
Fresh college graduate, and was referred to
with
that
20
for
years
the
of
first few
experience.
few years that I was the oldest new college hire in the area in the program. But yeah, I mean, I went in as a engineer too, fresh out of college with a master's degree in the CI program, and I was basically came in as program support with the intent of working through the levels of CI, Lean Six Sigma, becoming a master black belt, and then delivering training and supporting the program from that level. That was the intent when I came on board.
And you said some very nice things about the people that you work with and just the relationships that you have with them. Is it fair to say that you enjoy your work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We definitely have fun. You need to have thick skin coming into our team because it's like a bunch of brothers and sisters working together where it's the poke, the prod, the make fun of, the tease. We have a good time with what we do. I mean, but in all seriousness, I mean, we are there to work. We are there to drive continuous improvement in the program. We just enjoy what we do and we enjoy working with each other, so we make it fun.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's important to note, since we're not using the company name specifically, but you guys deal with a very serious subject matter. I mean, literally life
Very,
are on the
very serious.
line with the work that you guys do.
Yes,
So
very
the
serious.
fact that you can have fun and be involved in a very serious matter, I think is a, Cal, I think that's one of the awesome things that I love about your story and just a lot of people in general in this discipline is this idea that if you find a good career, a good job, work doesn't have to suck. Like work shouldn't be like this terrible thing that you dread. It can actually be, kind of fun and kind of interesting. So that's great.
Exactly, and that's how our entire team looks at it. It's with the level of seriousness, the levels of stress that we deal with on a daily basis with what we do. If we weren't able to have fun with it and try to have some stress relief in our daily activities, I
Yeah.
think we would all have already left by now.
Well, I am a little curious to go back to your firefighter career and ask a couple more questions about that.
Oh,
First of all,
sure.
how did you get into being a firefighter? That's definitely, you
I
know,
grew up in the fire service, if you will.
okay.
My dad was a firefighter
Okay.
my whole life, and I won't say I came in as a legacy, but I already knew everybody at the fire department that I went to work for. I grew up with all of them and their kids and things of that nature, so that was my step in the door there. It was just
That's great.
opportunity at the time and familiar circumstances, if you will. So it was almost a no-brainer to kind of fill that gap and that need at the moment, and 17 years later, it's which flew by, and, I mean, it was almost like the blink of an eye, 17 years had gone by.
Yeah, I think the firefighting profession, I've got, a handful of friends that are involved in that and hear stories and, it's often used as examples of different kinds of work, but it is really interesting. I'm guessing that the terms like Lean Six Sigma and continuous improvement may not have been like part of what was taught, but you guys were doing the things that in hindsight were like, standard work and
Right.
us and some of those.
Everything was there was no Lean or Six Sigma language spoken, but standard operating procedures, standard work, standards across all of our apparatus on how they were set up, on the equipment that was located on those, and where on each one it was located. So there were standards from that perspective, but also how we worked on emergency scenes. So there was no freelancing. You worked as a team. Everything you did was with your engine crew as a team. There was no going off on your own to do stuff. So all of these
No going off script.
ideas of standard work of you will do things this way because this is the most efficient or most optimized or safest. So that's where, like I said, that's where all of the standard work, things of that nature really, where I really became exposed to them. And, we always had the saying, and I know most firefighters do too, is we're the ones you seen running to the fire when everybody else is running away from it. But at the same time, we approached those scenes without chaos in an organized manner. The scene itself was already chaotic without bringing your own chaos to it. So there again, that's where the standard work, how we operated, how we approached a scene, how we approached a fire, how we attacked the fire, all of that became standard work. Granted, within reason that I mean, it's like every CI opportunity you have, within reason, there's standard work, but each one has its own intricacies that you have to deal with and you have to react to. Fire scenes are the same way. Where you may have standard work, you're still having to understand the scene, read it, and then strategize to know how to go forth with it. So again, falls right in line with CI. You have to understand what the problem is, put a game plan together, and then start working towards a great outcome or a good outcome.
What are some of the things that you feel like are lessons that you learned as a firefighter that have carried forward into this career in quality and continuous improvement that you might not have expected?
And I've talked to my coworkers about this, and it's one of the things that seems to have made this transition fit so well is as a firefighter, even though you may have things you do every day at work, every day is different. In CI, you have to remain flexible and be able to pivot at a moment's notice as things change or redirect. Already having that experience and mindset, that's really made a difference. That it's you don't come in the office every day expecting this is what I do every day. I push this button, I enter this form. You come in really not knowing what the day's gonna entail, and you have to be okay with that. A lot of people are not, and a lot of people have to have that hard structure. This is not an area where hard structure, benefits you, and that's one of the main things coming from the fire service where, yes, there's standard work, every day's different. Every incident's different. I mean, you may get a call to a car wreck today. You come tomorrow, you get a call to the same kind of car wreck, but even then, it's still a different incident. Everything about it is still different. So you have to be flexible and you have to be okay with being flexible and not having that hard structure. That's probably one of the main things, along with as a firefighter, you're in the public eye all the time. You have to be able to read your audience and communicate with them on any level because in most cases, you're seeing people at their worst.
Yeah.
They're injured or they're losing everything they own in a fire, whatever. So you have to be able to manage the situation, manage your audience or manage the people and communicate in a way that it's comforting to them, answering their questions, giving them perspective that there's still a light at the end of the tunnel. Same thing transitions into the CI world of you're dealing with people that, eh, in most cases, at least in our group where we have a CI program and then a lot of businesses, if you will, across the enterprise where those individual businesses, it may be the burning platform of the day that they're, being hammered by leadership or whatever. You have to fix this problem. You have to fix this problem. And we can come in and sit them down. Let's look at the data. Everything's okay. We can, help you get through this. It's still the same kind of communication. You have to understand the situation, understand your audience, and be able to communicate that to them. So, being able to publicly speak, that was something that I absolutely could not do before the fire service. Being in that career basically smoothed all the edges, if you will, took away the panic mode of public speaking, all of that. So it made it a very good transition into the CI world because I already had that experience. Now I'm comfortable in my own skin, if you will, of being able to communicate with all levels of leadership and employees, coworkers.
Now, the CI program, you came into a CI program, continuous improvement program that was somewhat established.
2 years old at the time that I came
It was
in.
how old?
2 years old. It
Just only
started
2
in
years old, okay.
2016. I came in
So coming up on
2018.
10 years now, and I
Yes.
know I've talked to many people who have been part of a CI program that lasted 2 years or 3 years, and then it went away, and then it came back. What do you think are some of the things that you guys are going on 10 years now, and you've got some pretty impressive, like, ROI savings
Mhm.
numbers. What are some of the things that you attribute that success of what I would say now is a fairly enduring program?
Yeah. For one, ample opportunity. There's plenty of opportunity for improvement, but more than that, we focused when our program was initially created, there was no CI culture at the company. And the focus of the president of the company at the time, that was he wanted to establish CI culture just to make a change in the company of CI becomes just how we do business every day. It's not something special. It's not an add-on to your daily job. But we had to start somewhere, and that was the beginning of it is, hey, let's start building a culture. Let's start training people. And then, along with that training people was project work application to show the actual benefit at the same time. But even with that, it was more about trying to build relationships within those little businesses, within those programs, that we aren't here. We're not the CI police. We're not here to tell you what you're doing wrong. We're here to support you. We're here to help you if you have issues or, whether it's yield issues, throughput, whatever. We're resources for you. We're here to help you. We're not here to dictate to you. So having those communication up front and starting to build those relationships, I would say that's probably what has sustained us the longest because we now have pull from all of those relationships hey, it just I frequently get called by one that's fairly local. It's 3.5 hour drive, but it's fairly local to me that I frequently get the call from them. Hey, we have these issues. Can you come down and help us with it? That didn't exist before.
So, kind of following the thread of your story and your involvement with continuous improvement and quality, being, you're part of an organization that's multinational, but you
Mhm.
were working specifically in one country, I believe, working in this function, supporting all of these sites. Staying on this theme of like the leadership, and you sounds like you had a president that said, "Hey, we want to have this CI thing as part of our organization." They made some space for it. But then I know you recently had an experience like happens to a lot of people in CI where somebody from finance said, "Hey, we're spending money on this support function. Why are we spending all this money? Hey, can you come into my office
Mhm.
this afternoon and show us why we're spending all this money?" You
Yeah.
guys think went through an experience kind of like that, right?
Yes, it seems to occur every few years of we have to justify our existence of why are you still here? Haven't we broke you up and stuck you into the different business units and things of that nature? And it's then it starts pulling data, and that's where we've leveraged KPI Fire heavily on that, pulling data out of it to show the difference in the impact of our team being that centralized a support function versus those CI leads and master black belts who are embedded within those businesses. We tend to be able to drive much more impact, and our role isn't dictated by a specific program or business. So it still gives us that freedom to come in and say, I hate to say it this way, but we have the freedom to go in and tell someone their baby's ugly, if you will. Whereas if I was working within a specific business unit, I couldn't do that
Yeah.
because that's then putting my job at risk because the person I'm telling that to is becomes my boss. But in this situation, we have a little bit more freedom to be more open and be more flexible. But yes, we do have to justify our existence. And, once we pull the data together and show, our value at a minimum for a 10 to 1 ROI at a minimum for our program for what our budget is.
So, like the cost of your program, what it cost you guys to do versus the benefits that you guys able to generate 10 to 1.
Yeah, as a minimum, sometimes greater than that.
That seems like a pretty good story, a 10 to 1 ROI, finance folks. I'm assuming that you were able to get through that meeting with the job still intact?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Knock on wood every time so far, and you can't argue the data.
And I think you've told me that you have had a few promotions from when you first started to where you're at now. You started out as, I don't know
Started
if
out
you're
as a lowly new hire support function that
a college graduate.
new college graduate to, let's see here, 7 years later, 8 years later, whatever it's been, I'm now the program manager for the CI team
That's
and
beautiful.
have gone through all the trainings, development, and so certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt on top of it.
Yeah. I love that you've got that story of, success and promotion and, bonuses and all those good things that happen. And also that you've been through the cycle of a new program getting started through, being walked down to the CFO's office basically to say, justify your existence and making it through the other side because that is one of the sad stories in the continuous improvement world is that, sometimes people will start and oftentimes somebody will say, well, you just have to believe in it. You have to commit to it. It has to be core. And I believe all of that is true. But I also think you need to, one of our other podcast guests said a phrase that I really love. He said, show me the color of the money,
That's it.
which, you got to show that ROI.
You have to drive the with 'em, the what's in it for me,
Yeah.
for what they're getting out of what you're doing. So you have to be able to get them to look at the big picture, but also that color of the money.
Yeah. And you guys have had a few different approaches over the years in how you classify these savings impact. Like I don't know if you use the words hard savings and soft savings specifically. What's the terminology that you
We
guys use?
did initially, it was hard and soft savings. So hard savings were those things that were, HPU savings, labor savings that you could see at the bottom line. Soft savings were those cost avoidance, those necessary evils of money being bled out for things that are necessary but aren't necessarily transferred to the customer. So the company basically eats that, those soft saving sides of it. But almost every year there's been some evolution to how we categorize and record savings up to kind of where we are now, where our hard savings are typically labeled as business impact, because then it's anything that directly impacts those programs and their program budgets. Still have, instead of soft savings, we do have that label of cost avoidance, but we also specifically track and record and report COPQ. So we have a bucket for savings that's classified solely as cost of poor quality, along with one for EAC adjust. So if a huge improvements put in place, a substantial cost reduction for whether it's labor or material costs, things of that nature. In some cases, we can roll that up to the customer level and actually adjust that contractual cost of the product to the customer. It can be adjusted back. So then not only does the company see that reduction in their cost to do the stuff, it's also rolled up so the customer benefits from that as well. So it's basically like taking, and you don't see this often, because if I was the program manager for some of these programs, I would say no to it, because I'm not cutting my budget when I know next week I have new product that's got to go through development or other headwinds that I have to mitigate. So seeing EAC adjust aren't something that are common.
You used a couple of acronyms I like to try to explain. Use COPQ, cost of poor quality, and then EAC adjust. What's
Yeah. So EAC adjust is estimate at completion. Roughly, what's this going to cost the customer at completion and delivery?
Now, you said something a minute ago that's a great phrase for a master black belt, like it depends, right? There's a lot of it depends. So, given that the right answer might be it depends, could you share a little bit of your experience in how the level of depth that you use in recording savings and attributing savings, and maybe things that you tried that was maybe a little too deep versus not deep enough, and kind of where you think the best advice for how much detail to use in tracking your program benefits?
Yes, and we've kind of been around the world with this one, because when our program started, we weren't tracking savings at all. It was all about butts in seats, get people trained, start building that culture. But when we started down the path of actually um, evaluating the business impacts and trying to calculate the benefit of the CI improvements and all of that. It went from a very high level of, I'm working on this one thing. I reduced HPU on this one process. This was my baseline average HPU. This is my post improvement HPU. Calculate the delta between that multiplied by the number of units in that 1 year period, because for us, we only track to a 1 year period. We don't, at this time, we don't do life of active contract. We just do a 1 year period just to be conservative on what we report and to not have to, which kind of ties back to your question of not having to then go and pull active contracts to find out what is the total volume, for how long. We time block it to just a rolling 12-month period. So say we wrap up a project today, it's April 10th. We would look at the production schedule through April 10th, 27, and we would capture that rolling 12-month period of production as what the savings impact would be. After improvements have been put in place, we've tracked the data, we've validated that yes, it's a reduction, it's sustainable, there's real impact here. Then we actually do the savings evaluation calculation. And initially, we would put together the savings package, would send it to our finance folks. They would basically just check, does the math make sense, and sign off on it. Now we have a much more stringent process where you do your calculations, you provide all of your justification, all of your data, everything that goes with it. And then we have a face-to-face meeting with the finance POC, review the project. Here was the problem. This is what we did. Here's the validation on it, and then essentially discuss the calculations and the savings that were, but more from a conversation of, did we miss something? Is there something we're not accounting for? And allowing the finance person then to take what we did at the project or improvement level and then evaluate, are there things here that we're not including that should be? So it's a much more stringent, and then even once finance has reviewed, if they approve it, they give us written approval. So we have all of that as auditable artifacts.
That seems like a very useful piece of evidence when you're getting called down to the
It
to
is.
the CFO to justify the program existence, to have had the foresight to loop the finance folks in along the way. It
Yeah.
sounds like at the end of every project or periodically with every project.
At the end of every project, we wait till the project is complete and they've actually ran production at the new improvements so that there's real time production data that they're validating against. It comes down to volume of product coming off of it, but that could be 1 month of data to 6 months of data depending on volume, because our volumes vary wildly on what the particular product is. Some products, we produce 500 to 1,000 a week. Other products, we produce 5 a month. It just depends on what it is. So we base that on a significant sample size and time frame to get a good sample size of what's coming off that post improvement. So it's not a, hey, we piloted this is what came out of the pilot. This is our projection going forward and sign. No, we want the actual validated data showing that not only did it improve, but it sustained.
So you do these improvements, you've got these calculations, you meet with finance. I'm guessing near the time when the benefits start accruing or you've got something measurable, you track them or estimate them for a year. How frequently do you go back on those projects to make sure that they were sustained? Are you going back 6 months later, 9 months later?
We typically don't unless the program directs us to. Now, we do have some programs every 6 months, they're going back against actuals. And so instead of them capturing the rolling 12-month, they're capturing an every 6 month.
And do you have targets or goals set for, I mean, you do for savings, of course, right? You've got a savings number. Let's go through that stack a little bit. Again, when you first started out, you probably didn't have a savings target number
No,
because you didn't even know what was possible. Then you get into
no.
it, you figure it out, and you set a number. And like a lot of goals, you're like, okay, this is what we did last time. Let's try to do a little bit better. Is there anything you could share about how, a mature program goes about setting savings targets? Is there things that like does the finance team say, "Hey, we think there's some opportunities in this area," or do they come more bottom up?
It comes from the business units themselves. They take a look at what they know they have opportunity for, and they build a goal off of that. And it's a twofold goal. They have their base target that they're shooting for, but then they have to set a stretch.
Got
So,
it.
okay, say for instance, business unit X here comes in and says, okay, we're going to set our target at 5 million this year, but my stretch is 8. And they
Okay.
shoot for their stretch with the, I've got to hit my bare minimum target, but I'm shooting for my stretch. But to your point, when we first started capturing savings, there was no targets, no goals. I mean, it was, do we even think this is possible? And we don't necessarily have a process in place. So it's that whole development and build it up. But even after the first year, it was so successful tracking and capturing savings that the second year we had a goal.
Yeah.
That was mandated by our VP.
I think that's probably a pretty good lesson, as far as
Yeah,
like lessons learned is if you don't currently have a savings goal, track what you can do
that's it.
and then set a baseline and then try to beat it the next year. Is there any like rules of thumb that you guys use internally? Like I've heard some people say, we're shooting for 1 to 3% of total operating costs and savings, or do you guys have anything that simple?
No, for us, it seems to become competition between the business units of, he said he's doing 15, I'm doing 17. It's some of that. They do look at it as, okay, it's so let me roll that back a little bit. We do get some guidance dictated down from leadership, from the enterprise leadership. So for cost of poor quality, for instance,
Yeah,
we need to across the board as an enterprise reduce COPQ by 10% this year. Well, each business unit could take their cost of poor quality metric, calculate that 10% reduction off of it, and use that as their starting point for setting their goal.
that makes
So
sense.
things of that nature, or it's, we had a defect rate of Y last year. We want to reduce that. Well, what's the total impact of that reduction? That's going to be part of our savings goal. So there are things like that that they use, but again, there's pretty good competition between some of the businesses. So some of them get wildly elevated,
Yeah.
but they're still achieved.
I think that's kind of a very interesting part of this discipline really is it's kind of like balancing that, hey, we're doing serious work here, but we're also having some fun. I think generally speaking, everybody likes to have a good day at work, and having a measure for what success looks like is not just good for the business, it's good for the spirit, like,
Yes.
okay, I won today, right? Like we had
And
a good day. We won this quarter. So I think that's a good lesson.
it goes back to the comment I made earlier. dealing with leadership and communicating value, the folks running the projects, the business units also need to understand the WIFM, the what's in it for them
Yeah,
as well. That they need to know that this work that they just did is valued and the purpose and the overall impact of it to the company. So, and that's one of the things that we really try to push with everyone on that are running projects that we're connected with on this is getting them to understand the big picture. It's not that you just saved your program, 100K on this particular process, but you reduce scrap, you reduce rework. So from a company perspective, you also hit this COPQ metric that the president of our company has asked to have reduced.
there you go.
So, and then you see that light bulb go off. Well, I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking outside of my little bubble here of, the overall benefit or impact of the work that I just did. So it gives them that a little extra pat on the back for, or attaboy for the extra effort they just put forth. Because a lot of these, I mean, and this is kind of standard across the industry. I mean, this is extra work to your day job. Running a
Yeah, you look
project
at
is
it that
not what
way.
you do on a daily basis unless that's your only job is leading projects. It's extra work on your normal routine. So, just having somebody walk through and shake your hand and say thank you, that's huge. Just knowing that the work's valued. So it's that whole with them piece again.
Is, I think part of the job that good leaders can do to just keep people engaged and excited and interested and really having good days at work, essentially.
Right, right.
You used a couple of acronyms again there that I just want to point out that you guys have some mature KPIs that you measure against. COPQ, cost per quality, HPU, hours per unit,
Yep. Hours per
basically,
unit,
defect rates.
defect rate, whether
You
it's
probably have some
CPU,
standard safety
DPMO.
metrics, TRIR, total recordable incidents or something. Do you have, is that the one that you use for safety?
So we have a safety group that they use that metric. So it's
But
a
what are some of the
recordable
other metrics that probably were hard to get to? I see a lot of organizations where they're measuring a million things, trying to figure out which ones
Mhm.
really matter. You guys probably have had weeks long steering committee meetings about the definition of COPQ or HPV,
Yeah.
HPV. But what would you say are like some of the simplicity on the far side of those long discussions?
Well, I will say probably one of the hardest conversations we've had to get people to understand is that
Yield.
yield doesn't mean, it's just what comes out the other side, especially when you're talking first pass yield.
Mm,
S- we had one particular program that, they were boasting about their high yield and started having conversations with them and looking at it and well, yeah, your yield's high because you're testing it 50 times, it's failed 49 and 50 it passes, so you push it
so
through.
they're
Let's look
testing
at
it.
your first pass yield, and when you look at first pass yield, it's 0. So having those conversations and getting people to change their mindset of, it's you need to be focused more on what's good that's going through as your measure, not what you're having to rework, repair, all of that, and then it comes out on the other end as something useful that's considered good. That's,
Yeah,
it's a different conversation of yield thing of that nature. But like COPQ, our company measures COPQ a very specific way. And without getting too deep into it, typical COPQ, it's your scrap, it's your rework, it's everything that goes into reworking something or scrapping something. We don't track it that way. Our company tracks it just a specific caveat of each one of those. So having those conversations, getting people to understand that when they talk COPQ, scrap and rework, that it's a subset of what industry calculates
okay.
COPQ at, what they may be familiar with from previous roles. So there has been a lot of that, and there's a lot of collaboration and communication with our group and the finance folks to get some of these definitions and clarifications put in black and white so they
Yeah,
can be communicated to everybody when they're kind of asking those questions of, well, why is my COPQ being reduced when it should be at this? Because you have all of this extra that's not tracked as COPQ in the company that
yeah,
be captured as cost avoidance or something extra. So it becomes confusing with some of those different categories of KPIs and stuff on how they're actually defined
yeah.
and how they're tracked.
I think there's a lesson in there that might that you guys have learned around what I would maybe call metric taxonomy.
Mm,
Having the standard name COPQ or first pass yield or defects is the first step.
Yes.
and using that across the 55 sites so that they're using the same metrics. But
Mhm.
then, because it's helpful to know that's how some of these savings targets get set is you've got all these sites and you find one site's way up here on one of their costs. You're like, hey, we've got 16 other proof points why this cost could be down here.
Right.
There's some savings there. Now, if you're not all using the same definition and formula for those metrics, then you can get into some other weirdness, that's where you
Exactly.
find out that they're using the same label for a metric, but they're calculating it totally differently. So those are interesting little lessons that, you learn in building a program and looking at things across multiple sites.
And it's something that we really learned once our program started actually tracking the savings.
Yeah.
It's not just an evaluation and review with finance, it's also that review and evaluation with your assigned master black belt. Did you actually calculate it correctly? Did you have extra stuff included in it? So it's that extra level that we basically learned by trial and error that we had to then plug into our process of how we do this stuff for that very reason. Because even with you take the same, one particular business area, but they have sites in multiple areas. The difference is in how each of those sites do it and trying to get them on that same standard definition and constraints around that KPI fire and how it's measured or that KPI and how it's measured. I mean, that in itself is a feat that we
Yeah.
battle all the time.
Well, and I think that's one of the value add areas that the CI, and there's other functions that can do that also in finance, but CI can shed some light on, hey, we're including this cost over here in COPQ, we're not including it over there. So there's that, like, how are we doing it across the different sites, visibility that, folks in CI tend to.
And there have been standards put in place by finance as those things emerge and are uncovered. Now we have more standards that have to be communicated out that everybody has to do it this way. Here's the definitions of those. So, because a lot of this is, um, it's in a lot of areas within the business, it's still new to them of CI and how to calculate it and capture a savings on it. So, I mean, we're still seeing some of that nuance of, well, why is this not included? Well, why can't I include that? So it doesn't stop. It's
Yeah, I think that's a job security in CI, right? It's like, I think some people think, "Hey, let's do this CI thing for a couple of years and we'll fix all the problems." Like,
no.
Chris is here to say, like, that never they
No, it never stops. I mean, unless you're an organization that builds one thing, and at some point, you should be able to get to a point where you don't need that CI program because you've optimized it as much as you can optimize it, but technology is changing by the minute,
yeah.
and so you start throwing in other products, other processes, you're constantly having that CI need because things are constantly popping up.
On that topic, I know, like, a lot of folks like to look at Toyota as the gold standard for continuous improvement and how they do it, and at Toyota, they would say things like, "We don't have a CI program, it's just part of what
Yes.
every manager does," and, sometimes CI programs the evolution will be that they, kinda get pushed out to maybe a business unit, function. Are there some things that, like, having a central CI function adds a benefit even if you do have a pretty mature, you've got 5 green belts at a particular site. You've got people that know to do projects. Are there things that a central CI structure can do that a decentralized can't do?
Yes. So I mentioned earlier we have some master black belts and CI leads within the business units. They're limited to that business unit. But as an enterprise, we have certain processes that I'll refer to them as umbrella processes or umbrella caveats that affect everybody. It's not specific to that one business. Well, those CI leads in those businesses they don't have the leverage to work something that would fall into that umbrella because they don't have access to those other business units. Whereas that centralized team, that's exactly where we shine because we can communicate and interact with all of the individual business units and programs and not have those restrictive caveats of, well, I report over here.
Yeah.
I can only work on the portion that touches my program for that pays my salary. I can't touch yours. Our salaries are not paid by the programs. They're paid by the enterprise. So we can go and insert anywhere into those umbrella or systemic issues is how they get labeled within our business.
Yeah.
systemic issues that impact the entire enterprise. So that's where having that centralized team really can come into play. But even with that, having a centralized team that's interacting with those individual businesses and divisions brings that little extra level standards that, okay, you may have someone in your business unit, but they're working with us. So it's still going to be the same conversation, the same methodology, the same toolboxes, the same approach. Whereas, you might take someone who doesn't work with us, they can kind of go feral, if you will, kind of do their own thing, that maybe because I've seen this in certain instances where you have someone that instead of stepping through the process, they jump to a solution and then question why the solution failed. Whereas that centralized team can keep them on track if they're working with them, following the process, making sure they're not missing anything so that they do have a solid improvement opportunity that gets leveraged that is much higher rate of being sustainable and effective.
You mentioned a minute ago about how your sites are getting competitive with each other, and I think that internal competition, like I'm imagining, I like to watch hockey, the NHL, right? They're getting ready to go into the playoff season right here. Imagine an NHL hockey game without referees to
Yeah.
keep the pace, like
That's
it'd
a
be
free
bench
for all.
clearing brawls all the time. Like I think your idea of setting standards, like the way the business units can function and people get competitive. And I think there is like, especially if there is a bit of competition, I've seen situations where, plant managers, they feel like they're in competition with others. So they start to get secretive about
Yes.
the things. And you need to have that CI program to, I mean, of course, confidential information and trade secrets and stuff, you got to keep
Right.
secret, but there's plenty of stuff in the same company that are best practices that you want to share. And so many times, I mean, this is just like us as humans, like a lot of us are so willing to share our wisdom and our insights, somebody just needs to ask.
Right.
And that's part of the CI function is to
Exactly.
make sure that we're asking for all those good ideas.
Exactly. And I will say within our company, there is that desire by leadership to have all of the CI opportunities and efforts be communicated. They want to know what's going on. They want to hear about it and they want to share those with other areas because, you may have, specific programs and specific businesses, but the process they're following is a standard industry process. Take, surface mount technology of, circuit card production. SMT is SMT, whether it's for this part, this program. So if you've got a best practice that you've identified for an SMT process, why not share it with one of the others? And that's what our leadership is asked for and pushes. We need that communication, that kind of that whole breaking the silo effect of those individual businesses of being secretive and nope, I'm not using that because I didn't create it in my playground, or no, you can't have it because this is mine. It's no, that's also where having that centralized CI team too plays in because we don't report to those individual businesses. We report to the enterprise. So anything that we uncover is free to communicate to the business, to the enterprise, so that there is none of that siloed effect.
Are you struggling to ignite real change in your continuous improvement program? Firestarter is your field guide. Real stories, proven strategies, no fluff. Get it now on Amazon. Good. I want to drill in a little bit to this idea of culture and ceremony and rituals. You talked about one a minute ago, the formality of the finance review, at the tail end of a project where you're looking at those benefits. I'm curious what other things you guys have done that might be like lessons learned that you're willing to share, even if it's just a recognition event or activity for people involved in ideas or projects.
Yeah, so we do have a formal award ceremony that we do for certifications, and there are strict processes around the steps that you go through to even qualify for certification at whatever level it is you're being trained on, because it is the completion of the course, the completion of an exam, completion of your project, and completion of an interview with your master black belt. And that master black belt has to sign off that, yes, you have proficiency in all of the requirements. And we have a standard document that we put together with all of the required proficiencies logged on it. And they all have to be met to even qualify for certification. And in doing that, we do host an actual ceremony, and we usually host those twice a year. They're typically done pre-COVID, they were always in person. Post-COVID, we've kept them in a remote setting, similar to this, where it's communicated, whether it's through like a WebEx platform or Zoom or Teams or something of that effect, and we open it up for anyone who wants to attend and help celebrate. And that's exactly what the whole ceremony is about. It's not about handing them their award or handing them their certificate. It's about celebrating the work that they did and the person that also gets communicated throughout our organization. So whether it's through our standard comms pieces, we have monitors in all of the hallways around all of our facilities. We run this stuff on those monitors as well. So people that typically wouldn't even be aware that this is happening are being exposed to it. And again, we still have those internal rewards program as well. So in some cases, not only did you get certification, but your manager also put you in for this bonus, if you will.
What is your career advice or guidance for somebody that might have, they're looking at a job that has this green belt requirement on it, and they're thinking, should I bother with doing this thing? What's your advice for that person?
Dude, coming in as a new college hire, I would jump in head first. It just completely changes the way you view everything, and not just at work. I mean, advice from one of my coworkers, communicate to your spouse before you lean out the pantry at your house. But it really truly does completely change the way you think about everything. You start the whole green belt, black belt process really drives that critical thinking. So everything you do then becomes an evaluation, if you will. You start looking at things differently than you ever did before. But it opens up so many opportunities as well because in your normal day job, hey, I'm working at my desk. How can I best make this cluttered mess less cluttered and make my productivity at my desk flow better to make myself more efficient? It plays into everything you do. It is a lot of information in a condensed amount of time going through the training. But if you're going through a structured program, whether it's ours or someone else's, having the training, having the project that having a project to go through training makes it that learn, apply application. Very few people retain just from death by PowerPoint or hearing someone speak. You have to have that hands-on application to really solidify and anchor those concepts and methodologies. But on top of that is having that master black belt mentor that you're able to bounce ideas and ask questions to and help give that technical guidance for someone who's just new to this, learning it.
Yeah.
You can't come out of a training class being an expert in this. It's all based on experience after the training. So having that mentor is 100% crucial, and that's something we have validated over and over in our own program, where we've had folks go off on their own with no mentor external to our program, and they fail. They come through ours, and they're wildly successful because of that mentor connection.
Well, Chris, I got a couple of rapid fire questions here. These are just, kind of top of mind stuff, but just quick question, top of mind answer. The most important job of a leader is to blank.
Communicate with his coworkers and employees.
Good one. Do you have a favorite go-to tool from the Lean Six Sigma toolbox that you turn to frequently?
Pareto chart.
Pareto chart. I love a good Pareto chart. Is there a book that you recommend on or currently reading?
One that we recommend a lot, and with one of our new lean programs, it's the Learning to See book that we've been really pushing with that new training program. So rereading that again, have a couple of others that I've got stuck back that I need to go back through, but I'm rereading Learning to See again right now, just refreshing myself with it because we have some new lean classes coming up, and it's always good to have that conversation with folks and refamiliarize yourself with what's in the book.
Yeah. That's a great one. That's a great one. How about this? Finish this sentence. Continuous improvement is.
It's a path to follow that gives you guidance. It gives you guidance and helps you set a compass point for true north of where we need to go, what you can do, and what's available to be able to leverage that.
Chris, I really appreciate you joining us today and having a conversation about this stuff. If anybody's interested in catching up with you, connecting with you, can we find you on LinkedIn? Is there a way that somebody
You can find me on LinkedIn, Keahey 18. That's about it. And I'm not on that much. Because when my workday ends, I try to disconnect as much as I can because I'm
Yeah.
behind this computer and 3 monitors all day, every day, unless I'm on site somewhere. So when I step away at the end of my workday, I try to completely disconnect. But I am on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. I
Awesome.
occasionally check it. It's just not something I frequent often.
Awesome. Chris, I really appreciate you making some time to have a conversation and tell some of the stories of success that you had with your program and share some lessons and insights that others might be able to benefit from as well. So thank you so much.
No, it's been my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity and glad.
For our listeners, if you'd like to suggest a guest, ask a question, or give any ideas for future episodes, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn also, Keith Norris. And this concludes this episode of KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to add a comment, like, follow, subscribe on the socials, and share the podcast with your friends or colleagues who are as passionate about continuous improvement as you are. And you can find us wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, keep driving progress and sparking change. This episode is brought to you by KPI Fire, the all-in-one platform for continuous improvement. With KPI Fire, you can align strategy, drive execution, and engage your people. So whether you're leading a team or driving enterprise-wide change, KPI Fire helps you deliver real results. Learn more at www.kpifire.com.